In 1999, Nvidia was fighting just to survive. Most people had never even heard of the company. Investors weren't paying attention. Wall Street didn't care. And compared to giants like Intel and Microsoft, Nvidia looked tiny. Fast forward to today. Nvidia is worth trillions of dollars. It's one of the most valuable companies on Earth. The world's biggest tech companies are racing to buy its chips. Governments are competing for access to its technology. And one man, wearing the same black leather jacket for decades, quietly built one of the greatest business empires in history. But here's the question. How did a company that made graphics cards for gamers become the company powering artificial intelligence? Was it luck? Was it perfect timing? Or was Nvidia planning this decades before the rest of the world realized what was coming? The answer is far more fascinating than most people think. Because Nvidia didn't just ride the AI revolution, it helped create it. To understand Nvidia, we have to go back to 1993. Three engineers believed computers were about to change forever. One of them was Jensen Huang. At the time, personal computers were becoming more common. But there was one major problem. Computers weren't designed for complex graphics. Games looked basic. 3D technology was limited. Everything felt slow. Most companies believed faster CPUs would solve the problem. Jensen Huang disagreed. He believed computers needed a completely different type of processor, one built specifically for graphics. It sounded risky. Most investors didn't understand it. Many thought the market was too small. After all, how many people actually needed advanced graphics? But Jensen wasn't building Nvidia for today's market. He was building it for tomorrow's. That mindset would eventually change the entire technology industry. Still, the early years were brutal. The company nearly ran out of money. Several products failed. Employees worked endless hours. At one point, many inside the company believed Nvidia might not survive. But then, everything changed. In 1999, Nvidia introduced something that would redefine the company, the GeForce 256. It wasn't just another graphics card. Nvidia called it the world's first GPU, Graphics Processing Unit. At first, that phrase didn't mean much. Today, everyone knows what a GPU is. But back then, it was a completely new category. The difference was revolutionary. Traditional processors handled tasks one after another. GPUs could perform thousands of calculations at the same time. For gaming, this meant smoother graphics, better lighting, more realistic worlds. Sales exploded. Gamers loved it. Developers loved it. And suddenly, Nvidia wasn't just surviving anymore. It was leading an entirely new industry. But Jensen Huang wasn't celebrating, because while everyone else saw gaming, he saw something much bigger, something almost nobody else imagined. By the mid-2000s, Nvidia dominated graphics cards. The company could have stayed exactly where it was. Many CEOs would have. After all, the gaming business was already making billions. But Jensen Huang kept asking one question. What else can GPUs do? That simple question changed everything. Researchers discovered something unexpected. GPUs weren't only good at graphics, they were incredibly powerful at solving mathematical problems. Scientists began using Nvidia chips for medical research. Universities started running complex simulations. Engineers used them to study climate models. Financial firms used them to analyze enormous amounts of data. Suddenly, the gaming chip was becoming a scientific tool. Most people didn't notice. Wall Street barely paid attention. Even some competitors dismissed it. But inside Nvidia, a much bigger vision was taking shape. Jensen Huang believed GPUs would eventually become the engine behind artificial intelligence. At the time, that idea sounded almost impossible, because AI wasn't changing the world yet. It was mostly an academic experiment. Few people cared. But Nvidia kept investing anyway, year after year, billions of dollars, without knowing exactly when the payoff would come. And then, the world changed. Artificial intelligence exploded into the mainstream. Almost overnight, every major technology company needed one thing: Nvidia GPUs. And suddenly, the company that once struggled to survive became the most important business in Silicon Valley. For years, Nvidia kept building faster GPUs. Most people still thought they were made for gamers, but behind closed doors, something extraordinary was happening. Researchers working on artificial intelligence discovered that training AI models required enormous computing power. Not a little, millions, sometimes billions, of mathematical calculations every second. Traditional CPUs weren't designed for that kind of workload, but Nvidia's GPUs were. Suddenly, the same chips designed to render video games became the perfect engine for artificial intelligence. Then came a turning point. Universities, research labs, and tech companies all reached the same conclusion. If they wanted to build smarter AI, they needed Nvidia. Almost overnight, demand exploded. But this wasn't just another product cycle. It was the beginning of a technological revolution, and Nvidia was standing right at the center of it. Then, everything accelerated. Artificial intelligence moved from research labs into the real world. Companies everywhere rushed to build AI products. Cloud providers expanded their data centers. Startups raised billions of dollars. Governments invested heavily in AI infrastructure. But there was one problem. Almost everyone needed the same hardware: Nvidia GPUs. Technology giants placed massive orders, not hundreds, not thousands, but tens of thousands of AI chips, each one costing tens of thousands of dollars. Waiting lists became longer. Supply couldn't keep up with demand. For the first time, the world's biggest technology companies weren't competing against Nvidia. They were competing with each other, just to buy Nvidia's products. That changed everything. Most people think Nvidia sells computer chips. That's only part of the story. Jensen Huang understood something his competitors missed. Hardware alone isn't enough. Developers also need software. Years earlier, Nvidia invested heavily in its software platform, a platform that made it much easier for engineers and researchers to build applications using Nvidia GPUs. Over time, millions of developers learned to build on that ecosystem. Universities taught it. Researchers relied on it. Companies built their AI systems around it. By the time competitors realized what was happening, switching away from Nvidia had become extremely difficult. The company wasn't just selling hardware anymore. It had created an ecosystem. And ecosystems are much harder to replace than products. That's when Wall Street finally understood. Nvidia wasn't simply winning the AI race. It had become the foundation on which much of the AI industry was being built. There was a time when Nvidia competed with graphics card companies. Today, it influences the future of artificial intelligence. As demand for AI exploded, so did Nvidia's business. Its revenue surged. Its profits reached record levels. Its market value climbed faster than almost any major company in history. Investors who once overlooked Nvidia suddenly saw it as one of the most important companies in the world. Why? Because AI wasn't just another technology trend. It was becoming the foundation for the next generation of software, healthcare, robotics, autonomous vehicles, scientific research, and cloud computing. And nearly every company building that future needed one thing first: powerful AI chips. Nvidia had spent decades preparing for a moment that nobody could predict. While others focused on short-term profits, Nvidia invested in research. While competitors chased today's market, Jensen Huang kept preparing for tomorrow's. When the AI boom finally arrived, Nvidia wasn't trying to catch up. It was already waiting at the finish line. It's easy to look at Nvidia today and call it an overnight success, but the truth is very different. This story didn't begin with artificial intelligence. It began with a belief that computers would one day solve problems far beyond gaming. For years, that vision looked too ambitious, too expensive, and maybe even unrealistic. But Nvidia kept building, it kept investing, and it kept improving its technology long before the world truly needed it. When AI finally changed everything, Nvidia wasn't lucky. It was ready. That may be the biggest lesson of all. The companies that shape the future usually don't react to change. They prepare for it years in advance. Today, Nvidia stands as one of the most influential technology companies on Earth. But in technology, no company stays on top forever. The same industry that created Nvidia's success can one day create its biggest challenge. History has shown it before. And it will almost certainly happen again. The only question is, who is quietly building the next revolution while everyone else is watching Nvidia? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Empire Decoded for more documentaries on the rise and fall of the world's biggest companies, the leaders behind them, and the business decisions that changed history. Because behind every empire, there's a story waiting to be decoded.